Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jen Brown. I am the lead trainer and curriculum designer with Renew US. Our big purpose with Renew is this idea of building state and local power for progressives, thinking about really focusing in on building that multiracial working class. And today you are joining us for Welcome to making the most of call time. So call time is that really important piece of every campaign. Campaigns run on limited resources. As we know, we're limited with time, we're limited with people, and we are limited with money. And call time is one of the most important ways for candidates, issue-based, any kind of campaign, really to hit that dollar amount that they need to power their campaign. So today, the specifics of us digging in, we did a brief introduction. We're going to do a short grounding, and then we will dive right into call time. We are thinking about the before, during, and after, as well as some best practices. There is also a handout that I'm going to give, a sample call sheet with some information on it. If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, it will be in the comments. I should say it'll be in the description. For those of you joining us in person, I'll drop it in the chat during the workshop, and then we'll have some time at the end for some question and answer. So let's get rolling, thinking about what you're fighting for, why you're here. Now, mine always changes. Last couple times I've really dived into the reason why I'm interested in progressive politics and building working class power is mostly because of housing justice and the idea that everyone deserves access to free and dignified housing. Housing shouldn't be commodified. Today, though, I think after speaking to a lot of people, I am truly fighting for a world where everyone feels like their voice matters. I remember when I first got involved in politics and I was a volunteer doing the phone bank calls, calling about candidates, and a friend of mine who was really heavily involved in politics told me, oh, well, keep volunteering, you'll find something if you want to work in this. And it's really hard. Maybe it's not for you, or you're a little too left. And these are all things that I heard when I wanted to get involved. I would voice an opinion and people would say, oh, no, don't say that. Or I would voice another opinion. People would be like, oh, maybe keep that to yourself. Things like thinking that police departments had too much money. Things like cops don't really stop crime. They show up once it's been completed. And after realizing that me, being a straight cis white woman, was being told to quiet down, I realized that most people are being told to quiet down and not speak their truth and not speak their opinions. And it's not right. Absolutely not. So this idea of not elevating voices, because everyone has a voice, this idea of passing the mic and letting everyone share their voice is what I'm fighting for today, because politicians work for us as the people. So this idea of having a gate-kept government, a gate-kept interactive democracy isn't something that I'm looking to further. I am definitely looking to make sure everyone watching this, everyone here has a voice and they do not get told to quiet down. So thinking about something that we like to do at Renew, an axiom of the day, this one's very apt to call time today, that it is not the quantity of the pressure we exert that counts, it's the quality. Now, this is so true for call time, fundraising, all of this, and we'll dig into why. Think about what this means to you. Have you been called by a candidate to donate money? Have you been approached during a fundraiser? And how did it make you feel? Did you donate? Did you think about, ooh, I don't really feel like a person here. I just feel like a number or a walking wallet. And a lot thinking about pressure and what that word means in the space of fundraising and call time. So thinking about our axiom and jumping right in, Call time specifically, let's get all on the same page of what it is. It's time candidates spend making direct calls to ask potential donors to ask them for money. Simple as that. Now, the process might be complicated, but that's all call time means. It means this time that is scheduled and arranged for candidates or potentially volunteers that are working for the candidates or staff, making calls directly to individuals asking for money. Now, notice how I didn't say anything about how often this takes place, because it should happen every single day. Now, the reason I truly believe that call time should happen every day, because it's very much like going to the gym. If you don't call on a regular basis, if you don't go to the gym on a regular basis, every time you go, every time you call, you're going to have that trepidation. That's sort of like, oh, what is going to happen today? What's going to go on? Maybe I'm going to have good calls. Maybe I'm not going to have good calls. As a very general rule, you should anticipate needing to raise at least 75% of your budget through call time. Now, that's a lot of pressure to put on call time once a week or call time twice a week. Schedule an hour every day. Schedule 2 hours every other day if every day is too difficult for you. The more it becomes habitual to have these conversations, the easier they're going to be, the more consistent your results are going to be, and the more people you can reach. So much like going to the gym, it is a practice. You're flexing a muscle in order to do this. So there's a couple things to think about when you're prepping for this call time. So first and foremost, you want to cut a list. Now, what does this mean? What is a list? Now, a list is the individuals that you plan on calling that evening. The reason you want to cut this in advance is because you want to have information to have these conversations. Calls run more smoothly if you have key information about these prospects. Now, helpful information can include past interactions, their giving history, biological information, biographical information. Like, you don't want to call someone and say, hey, is Mr. So-and-so there? And you're actually looking for Mrs. So-and-so there. You don't want to call someone that you know that you're going to school and present yourself as a stranger, or a cold call and they're actually someone that you've met before. So having this information, this background on people before you make the call will make it go far smoother. A few things that I really like for folks to think about when I'm managing a candidate's call time is thinking about who they're talking to. So not just those facts that I talked about, but like, who is that person on the other side? What do they care about? Why are you calling them? How much might they donate? So when you think about making an ask, which is not something we're going to dig too far into today, when you're thinking about it, though, being specific makes your ask more successful. When you're thinking about this in advance of your call time, the candidate is going to be able, or you as the candidate, you'll be able to have a smoother conversation when you get these bits of information out of the way first. So that prep is most of call time, I feel. If you haven't prepped, your call time's not going to go very smoothly. It's going to feel really, really clunky, because in the end, you're having a conversation. So some things that I like to add to those, like, where do you know them? Why do they care? You're breaking it down into core components of conversation. Who are you talking to? That first one, like, what's your relationship with that person? Are they someone that a friend went to school with? Are they someone you went to school with? Are they someone in your neighborhood? Have you met them consistently? Have you hung out with them? What does that relationship look like? After you think about the who, think about where they are. Now, this is not just geographical location. I'm talking about how is the current moment in history affecting them? How are they fitting in history? Right now, we're in the middle of a pretty large COVID surge. So thinking about that, where they are in that moment. That's really going to inform how you're going to speak to them. Because if you come in, you're like, oh my gosh, how's everything going? Yay. And you're all like upbeat and wild. You're not thinking about that current moment in history and actually giving that person space to be themselves. That little bit of small talk that happens during the call, which we'll get to when we dig into in the moment of call time, that is so crucial and so critical. And those two first points of who you're talking to and where they are, and also where you are ways to inform your conversation. Also, these next two, what do they want and what do you want? Clearly, you want a donation, right? But what else are you looking for in that moment? What does a donation mean? Does it mean support? Does it mean connection? Does it mean getting involved in that campaign? And what do they want from you? A lot of times people want to know that someone is fighting for them. If no one is fighting for them, and again, they're just seen as another person that's another piece of this larger mission, they're going to feel exactly like that, another person and another piece. Why do they matter? Because of what they want. And then finally, how do you both feel? There's a lot of conversation around the left's version of ethical fundraising. So thinking about asking for ethical amounts, not asking for too much, being really like careful on who you're talking to, things like that. I think it goes larger than just like who you're talking to and amounts. I think it's acknowledging that you're talking to another person on the other side and how you both feel in this moment and about this moment is a really important consideration going into this phone call. This is not just a random phone call. This is not just a, hey, you want to volunteer a little bit? Call time is this dedicated piece of conversation where you are garnering and connecting and building a relationship in order for more support. So when you are doing this prep, there's some other things that'll help make everything go easier. First, I always say test the numbers, schedule these calls. If you can, if there's someone on staff that can say, hey, can so-and-so give you a call between 6 and 7 p.m. on Tuesday? Then you're going to waste less time hitting a voicemail, being an unidentified number on the phone that no one is going to answer because they're like, oh, who's this phone number? What is this? Really making sure these numbers also work, because call time is not necessarily about calling a bunch of people cold. You might have a few cold calls, but a lot of times you're calling specific individuals. You want their time to feel valued as well. Scheduling these calls are a great way to do that. It's also a great volunteer activity, is calling your list ahead of time to ensure that these numbers are good and getting these calls scheduled, finding if an alternative number or time works better. If they get someone on the phone, say you have your volunteer team or a volunteer going through your list, getting someone on the phone, find the best time to talk to them. Because you are asking for something with call time, maybe 6 p.m. on a Tuesday isn't the best time to reach someone. Maybe they prefer being called in the morning. Maybe they prefer being called after dinner or midday. So thinking about that most optimal time to reach that individual. I don't like saying there's an optimal time to make calls because there isn't, because it's so personal. But that's a really good way, especially if you've got call time every day scheduled in, to say, hey, are you free in the morning this week? Or maybe the caller is like, hey, I can do Friday at any time. And look, you've got a call time hour scheduled on Friday. You can plug them right in there. And then you've automatically saved yourself time, energy, space, and that annoying disappointment of, oh my gosh, everyone was an answering machine. No one has answered the phone. So really like that work smarter, not harder mentality when you're prepping for call time, I think is incredibly important in that scheduling, testing numbers, getting ready. Now, when I say practice for this next point, I mean for real. Like You are not practicing in your head. You're not practicing quietly to yourself and reading what's on your paper. You're practicing with another person. Grab someone from a campaign. If you're a campaign manager, make your candidate practice this. Be a caller. Be yourself and be a caller and have them practice a conversation. Because while some folks really like to script out aspects of their call, I'm like, have an idea of the points you want to talk about, but don't read things word for word. When someone's reading something word for word or even writing something word for word, you get stuck on the way you want it to sound versus the way it could sound naturally. So have points. That's kind of what your call sheet is for, and that's what we'll talk about momentarily. But you don't necessarily have to follow it in an A, B, C, D manner. You can break things up and move around. This is where the practice comes in, though, because if you are priming yourself to ebb and flow and handle impromptu moments in this conversation, it will feel more like a conversation and relationship building than you just calling someone to ask for money. Now, while call time is referred to as dialing for dollars, no one wants to feel like they are just an ATM. Everyone wants to feel valued. Of all things, people want to feel like they are seen and being fought for and valued. And by allowing yourself to be the best version of yourself in that call, you are letting them feel valued. So this practice, even if you warm up for 2 or 3 minutes before you start making calls, you have already started at a better point of making your calls, as opposed to starting cold. Your voice cracks a little. You have that moment where none of your words completely make sense and you're kind of all over the place. So thinking about building in 5-10 minutes of practice before you start your call time is absolutely important. Really digging into what practice means to you as well. And that doesn't mean just something as simple or as complicated as running through a whole call. It might be warming up your voice. It might be jumping around, getting hyped up. A candidate I worked with, we would have a little bit of a dance party before every single call time. We her favorite song. And I'm just going to ask everyone to stay on mute while I'm going through this, just so we don't get any feedback, because the recording will be available afterwards. So thinking about that dance like time before a call shift, you want to go in feeling as if you are the best version of yourself, because that's how you get people knowing that you're going to fight for them. So another thing I really like to practice when it comes to call time is this active listening piece. Now, there's a couple of really important pieces about active listening. Summarization and reiteration are the best ways that you can show you're listening to someone. We've all been in that moment where we've started a phone call, we've heard someone start a conversation, and they're like, hey, how's it going today? And you're like, fine, how's it going? Fine, how's it going? Because that person wasn't checked in the moment, right? You're going into autopilot and just saying like, hey, what's up? As opposed to actually listening to the person on that other side. So with summarization, you're asking, hey, how's it going? They're giving you some information and you're using a little bit of what they just said in your answer in a later piece of the conversation. Now, before we started, we were chit-chatting a bit about how it's the 11th day of the year and it's only the 11th day of the year and everyone seems to have COVID. So if I'm maybe or having a quarantine or having a scare, something's going on. Now, if I'm on a call with those folks that I was chatting with in the beginning, maybe I bring up, yeah, since we're all so concerned that COVID is everywhere around us, I've summarized a piece of information that we talked about earlier, showing that I was actively listening. Now, reiteration is very similar in that sense, only you're using exact phrasing from what the person said. One of the folks that I was talking to before, they mentioned that today is their Monday. So maybe if I'm using reiteration, I would say, today is your Monday. Every day feels like my Monday. So I'm using phrasing, exact phrasing that another person may use to show that I'm listening. Now, active listening isn't just really good to do because it feels good. It actually changes chemistry in your brain. So it's a nice way to build trust and connection. We remember how we feel about people. So when you are prepping yourself for call time, making sure you're not thinking about 20 other things that are happening back here, and you are thinking about the task at hand. The task at hand is I am calling people because I want them to be part of this campaign. I want them to be a donor. I want them to help this movement, help this fight, and move this forward. So that building trust and connection can only happen if you're actually checked into the moment at hand. Now, something else that active listening will do, you're going to be getting information for later use. Now, say you get a donation from a call. When you record that on your call sheet, which we'll get to in just a moment, what's going to end up happening is you're going to remember things they said. So next time you call, maybe you're like, hey, does today feel like a Monday still? Because it does for me. Honestly, be authentic and be genuine in that moment. But it's a nice way to get information both for later in the call and further conversations. And this is why you prep, right? This is why you look over the things that you have. So you're not worried about 100 things at once. You're like, okay, I am in the moment. My goal is to have a conversation with this person. I'm not going to think about, oh no, I have 20 other calls to make during this hour. I'm going to think right now, I am talking to this individual in front of me, and we are talking about why they matter and why I want them involved. So when you're actually making the calls, of course, there's a couple things that you need to remember. I am always a big proponent of setting up your space for success. What that means for me and candidates I've worked for, make sure there's snacks. I actually currently even have snacks in my space, and I'm not even doing call time because no one wants to call hangry, right? You want to make sure that you're not feeling any sort of, oh, I gotta get out of here moments. So having some snacks, having some water, and having a hype person. Now, when I say a hype person, real importance, we probably have all been in a situation where we have gotten ourselves real excited to make a phone call. We're like, all right, I can do this. I got this. We pick up the phone, we dial the number, and we're like, heart is beating, and we're sweating a little bit, and we get a voicemail. And we're like, okay, that's fine. I'm going to call the next number. Heart's beating, ready. And you get a voicemail, or you get a not home, or you get a not now. That can be super demoralizing during call time. When you have in your head, oh, even if it's in the back of your head, I have to make 75% of my campaign budget through call time, and you get a lot of dead ends. So that hype person is there both to unload after calls and to be there and be like, you got this. Yeah. Now we'll talk about some things that you want to make sure that hype person isn't doing in a little bit, but having that person there to make sure you're staying on point, to make sure that they're downloading some information, maybe some things that happen that aren't great, or keeping them positive for the calls moving forward. Now, what I'm going to drop in the chat is this call sheet. And this is something else that you definitely need when you're actually making the calls. So if you're watching this after, again, this example is actually in the notes. I'm making sure everyone can view it. Fantastic. This is a very generic call sheet that I've used in the past. Please feel free to file, make a copy, and use it, change it, whatever you need to do. I want to go over a few things on this call sheet because no matter what kind of call sheet you have, I think it's really important to have certain things on your sheet. So first off, it's what you're asking for. Maybe it's Jen's campaign. Maybe it's Jen's canvassing team. Whatever that looks like. It can be as simple, as specific, or as wide as you like. Source of prospect or donor. Where did this person come from? Are they friends with your campaign manager? Are they friends with you? Are they someone you went to school with? When you're Rolodexing folks that you could be calling, you want to make sure you're categorizing them. So you have these points of contact that you can possibly refer to when you're building your relationship. the date, if there's a staff contact, maybe a volunteer made a call for you and scheduled some time. Are they connected to anyone on staff? Maybe, maybe not. Important to know if they are. Then typical information, name, if they have a work phone, the company they work at. With fundraising, that most people understand the compliance ideas behind it. If they've gotten to this point at call time, it's just a really good place to make sure you've got it written down. Sometimes not necessary for a call sheet if you're aware that you are compliant in asking someone for money and they are in a profession that it's fine that you're asking. Always important, in my opinion, to have as much information on people as possible. Donor history, amounts, dates, events. This can be if they've given for you in the past or they've given to a like candidate. Now, we'll talk a little bit about donor history when we think about making calls using technology, using a dialer or a donor software system. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Still important to have in front of you, whether that be on the screen or whether that be on a sheet. Now, some people are like, we don't print call sheets anymore. Totally get it. I like physical things. I don't mind entering it in or having someone enter things in. So it's really up to you and your candidate. If you need something physical in front of you, have this information in front of you no matter what. General notes. This is the random stuff. This is hung out one night at this coffee shop and talked about the campaign. This is digging into the position that they like. Why are they already supporting you? Issue interests. Where do their stakes fall? Where does their information fall? How do they know you? And results. So it might be something as simple as like, hey, didn't reach them, calling back and the date you tried. It might be here, donated $50, interested in getting more involved, and so on and so forth. So this sheet encompasses the information you know. To answer your question that's come up in the chat, how can we find out who they've donated to in the past? There are fundraising databases that you can look through. There are lists available for purchase. I like to check the FEC database, even if I'm working on a local race, because I personally really like to see if they've donated to any national candidates. That just helps me understand alignments. A lot of times for local, you can get information from, like I said, if you're working with the dialer program, if you're paying for that information, you can purchase lists. But I like to go the free route first. I look on FEC fundraising, FEC donations, just Google that. I will also drop it in the chat near the end when we're having Q&A, because then you can see a history of donations and then you're kind of getting an idea. This I find is really helpful to see if maybe they've done a switch. I've worked with some candidates who were very left-leaning, and I've looked up potential donors, fundraising history. And in the past, they had donated to people like Mitch McConnell. And then you saw a switch happen in 2016, where they were like, oh, nope, I'm actually going in this direction. And their donations became more and more progressive. So that is a good talking point, because thinking about why a person might make some cognitive switch in that moment in their existence to stop giving from someone like Mitch McConnell and go in a very progressive donation. In this person I'm thinking of, they were giving to Bernie and to AOC. So thinking about that, always good to get as much information as possible. This donor history, again, maybe you're looking at FEC, maybe you're looking at a list, maybe it's your personal donor history with this person. It's a really good question, finding out how people can get more information about where they've donated to in the past. And this is why that prep is so important. More you know, the better you're going to do. So some things that you want to make sure you're doing during this call time, you want to really make sure that you have some sort of script, but not using it. Now, again, this, in my opinion, is your script, this fundraising call sheet. Some people need their ask written down really specifically. Some people need what they're asking for. Like, I'm asking you to donate $5 to X, Y, and Z. Can you contribute? Can you give? Whatever wording fits in that candidate's mouth. Some people need that to feel confident, and I get it. In my opinion, this information to have talking points is more important than any script because you want your candidate to sound as natural as possible. That being said, too much creativity is just as bad as not enough. So if people don't have some talking points, they are going to feel like they have everything in the whole wide world to grab from, and that conversation is going to be that awkward small talk. Now, to make that small talk not awkward, take notes. When you ask someone how they're doing and they give you a rundown of their day, they're giving you tons of information. If you were to ask how I was doing today, I would say, I'm doing pretty good. I've got a really busy day, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of interviews we're doing for an upcoming cohort, really excited, all good stuff. Now you've heard that, and maybe you're like, cohort, what is a cohort? So you go, Jen, you mentioned you're interviewing for a cohort. Can you tell me more about that? You might be thinking, oh, but that's taking away from time for that call. Mm-mm. That is building a relationship. That is connecting with that person to show that they matter, their time matters, and you care about them. Now, of course, don't actually ask if you don't care. Like you want to be genuine, right? So if you don't care what cohort is as that example, don't ask about it because it's just going to be awkward and you're going to be like, great. So what I called about, take notes and use the notes as necessary. Log the results. Did they pledge to give? Was there no answer? Did they agree to attend a fundraiser? Did they want more information? All of these outcomes will determine the follow-up afterwards. So it's important to have it recorded in such a way that you can easily search and act on. So again, in that prep piece, maybe you want anyone that donated to get a follow-up card in the mail or get a follow-up email. Having that streamlined in advance will help you know what to do after call time, so it operates like a system. So that logging of results is going to help you keep it moving. If you get to the point where you have a bunch of hangups and you're like, oh, what do I do? Well, you've already planned for that contingency because you have some calls here that you're just going to keep. Like in this time, you're going to call 5 people. In this hour, you're going to aim for 6 calls. And if you get 4 done, great. Either push the time a little bit or schedule them the next time. So that keep it moving, have a plan before you go in. Not just, all right, we're going to get through some of the list today. Aim for that goal, whatever it may be. And in the beginning, you're not going to know it. So it's okay if you do a few, I don't want to say test runs, but like, hey, here's our first call time today. We're going to see how many calls we get through and then revisit it, discuss it, and alter it for next time. Big thing I see people miss. Make sure to be ready to take the monies. If someone is ready to give you money at that moment and you are like, wait, I need to, you might lose them. Hopefully you don't because they're already ready to give you money. But if you don't have a way, if you don't have a next step for them in that moment to take money, to say, hey, yes, I'll send you processing, I'll send this to you, then you're not going to be able to make it actually work for your call time. It will not be something that's successful. You want to keep positive as well. When you're thinking about keeping that upbeatness, you're not being toxic positive. You're moving forward in ways that you're like, yes, absolutely. We're going to do this. We're doing this together. We're fighting together. You don't want to be like, wow, I've called 7 people today and you're my 8th call and no one's been home. You're my first person that's been home. Whew. You don't want to put that energy on top of a call. So keeping positive is less about being like, oh my gosh, yay, all the time, and more about this is your first call. Even if it's your 50th call, this is your first call. And you bring that same energy, that same sort of excitement and desire to get that person involved. And then finally, the thing that I wanted to talk about before, we've got a couple more slides that we're going to go to, but something to make sure you're doing is being mindful of your hype person, that staff person, that back and forth. If you get too caught up in the weeds discussing other things, that's no longer call time. That is like a team meeting. That's no longer y'all working on reaching people. It is really then what ends up being a team meeting, a staff meeting. So be really mindful of the staff back and forth and make sure it's focused on what you're doing. So thinking about software that you may be digging into using. Now, there's a ton out there. There's software that can send follow-up emails for you. There's software that can do the dialing for you, have someone in queue, do the scheduling, process payments, find their donor history, all of that. The first thing that is the most important thing to consider, do not spend what you can't make back. Some of these softwares start at $500 a month. If that seems worth it in the budget of your campaign and you know you're bringing in more than $500 because you've got call time scheduled every single day of the week and you're really excited to dig into it and your candidate's ready to dedicate for it, maybe software is the best choice for you. Now, at the same time, if you know you're not going to be able to convince your candidate to do call time, say, every day of the week or consistently enough that you'd be able to pay for $500 a month of a software, don't do it. So make sure you are prepared if you make the investment to put in the time behind the investment. This is not AI doing it for you. This is maximizing your call time software. You want to definitely look at capacity. Now, if you are running a really tight operation and you have some extra money, then having a software will help you be able to streamline some things. If you have a strong finance team of volunteers, then maybe you don't need it because you can make do with an Excel spreadsheet and some other free things that you can do to keep track of everything. Finally, research your choices. Do not be wooed by a pitch. Like everything you're spending money on, there are many, 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 many options. You do not want to pick the first one. If anything, compare 3, see how they ring up, and you know you want to do one, great, you've compared it to 2 others. So thinking about 2 software or not, there's pluses and minuses both sides on using fundraising software. In the end, it will not do the fundraising for you. It will not do the call time for you. It will streamline your call time. It might give you some more information about the people you're calling. It will not do it for you though. When you are making calls, you want to encourage your candidate to remember reason, amount, time. Every time you call a potential donor, you need to include the reason why you need their donation, the amount you need, and when you need it by. So for example, maybe you're calling someone and you're like, hey, Brianna, good to talk to you again. I'm calling to update you on the campaign. I have a critical campaign fundraising deadline at the end of the month. It's the last one before the primary election, and I want to close out strong. I know you've given me $50 in the past, and I could really use another 50 to show my opponents I mean business when I say we're going to fight for better schools and jobs. This money will really add to our organizing team. Do you think you can donate $50 today? So thinking about what that looks like and thinking about that reason, amount, time, you've got those 3 things dug in. So truly, when you are thinking about asking and making any sort of call time, you want to include that reason, the amount, and time. And that's the specifics of an ask, right? So when you're making that ask, you are thinking about why, you're giving a specific, and then you are also asking for some sort of urgency with it. Few more things to remember while you're calling. Watch out for voicemails. Only about 33% of people listen to voicemails, and only 18% listen to voicemails from numbers they don't know. So when you're thinking about what that might look like, when you are connecting with people on voicemail, when you are leaving a voicemail, if you know that a donor has saved their number in the phone so they know who your candidate is, they're friends with your candidate, they might call your candidate, things like that, by all means, leave a custom voicemail. Otherwise, skip leaving a voicemail and really move on to that next call. Work on that power dialing. So you also want to make sure that you are using past donations as a springboard. If you're talking to someone who's made a donation in the past, use that contribution as a way to increase and introduce your donation appeal. Reminding donors of their past contributions can help lead to future ones. So saying something like, we really appreciate your previous donation, it helped to do this project. With another donation like that, we could do this project or this future idea. So really thinking about how you're, again, this is relationship building, right? You are not just treating everyone as that first time cold call. You are treating them as someone that you have connected with in the past and you intend on continuing to connect with in the future. Stay positive, always. Again, if you're having a rough call shift, get up, have that dance party, have that whatever is going to hype your candidate up. Let them eat a few snacks, let them drink some water, take a break, and then go back into it. With post-call time, you want to make sure that you are not letting money or people slip through the cracks. So you are following up, whether you talk to them or not. So you want to follow up with the pledges immediately so they can be fulfilled quickly. Meaning, if someone's like, yes, I'll give money, can you contact me on how to write a check, how to do this, and you don't have something ready in the moment. Great, you do that immediately. You do not wait a week, you do not wait 2 weeks, you don't wait a couple of days. You do it either that day or you do it the next. So really thinking about what that looks like so you can fulfill things quickly. Now, thinking about not letting people slip through the cracks, you want to make sure that you have a system for returning calls to people that you called that said, hey, can you call me back? Or you're having trouble reaching. So thinking about not letting those people slip through the cracks, if you didn't schedule time with them, this is a great opportunity. Have someone from your team give them a call, say, hey, we want to arrange some time to chat. Do you have any free time this week? Are you available Friday morning? Are you available Friday afternoon? And getting that scheduled into call time. Don't stop at calls for your follow-up. Try following up with emails, texts, and whatever is appropriate. Now, if it is not a closer contact, I would advise waiting to be on the phone until you send a text to someone. Following up with a text would be appropriate. I personally don't like reaching out cold via text, like, hey, I was just calling to ask you for this. Nah, if you know the person, hey, I was calling and I'd like to set up some time with you. Are you available? Aim for phone if possible, because that builds trust. You're connecting with a voice. I understand as an elder millennial, not a big fan of being on the phone. So if someone schedules something with me via text, I'm cool with that. If someone's asking me for something large via text, unless I know them, it's not always the most comfortable. So unless it's the last day of the quarter, try to schedule these folks for future call time sessions so your candidate can connect with them. You don't want to leave any money on the field. You don't want to leave any people on the field, which means you want to get in touch with the people you think that you can ask for donations. A few best practices. Make sure you've got someone to help you. If you're a candidate, if you are helping someone, make sure you're actually helping. What that means is, enter data, assist in whatever way that person needs, handle follow-ups. Those are really important pieces. They need to be sure that they're being done. Sometimes a candidate doesn't have time for these follow-ups, doesn't have time to enter the data. So having someone who can do it, that will pay attention to it and be mindful for it is really important. Sit in a comfortable chair. Like if you're sitting in an uncomfortable chair, that is going to harm call time. Some people like to move it in a different room, a different space. I'm fine wherever someone wants to hold call time as long as they're comfortable. So if that's in the office that they work in every day, that's in the office they work every day. If that's on their couch, that's on their couch. It has to be a space that they feel comfortable in, though. And I think one of the biggest things is sitting in something that you are not like squirming around or sitting like a croissant or having your legs fall asleep. And then finally, get feedback and take breaks. If you are that staffer that is present to help out and they're doing some like really good calls and you're taking some notes on things they're saying, tell them they're doing a good job. And on that same time, if they are doing something that you're like, hey, this sounds a little X, Y, and Z, maybe next time try A, B, and C. Giving that feedback and as a candidate, getting that feedback is only going to improve your performance and only going to improve the connection. And then finally, take breaks. If you are calling every day, if you're calling every other day and you are just like powering through and it's becoming robotic, it's going to sound robotic. So take a break if you need a break. Simple as that. Let yourself get up, take a bio break, take some water, go to the bathroom, whatever you need. And then last, I want to leave you with this. If you know why you care and why they care and what you can do together, you're going to have successful call times. People want to help innately. We want to help other people. So if you can tap into why that person wants to help and even have a conversation, maybe you're working with your campaign manager and you're like, hey, this person is really, really hyped about what we are doing with city streets downtown. That is something that's part of my campaign. So we're going to talk about that. Great. You understand why they care. Why do you care about the city streets downtown? Fantastic. That's because you think it's important to invest in a community. Awesome. Look at that. You've already prepped for a call. So having that understanding of why you care and why they care and what you both can do together is what is going to make your call time soar. So for those of you watching after, we are going to drop all the links into the bio section, I should say, the information section. And then those of you joining real time, I'm going to stop the recording so we are able to have a conversation if there's any questions that I can answer. That being said, thank you all so much and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, everyone.